With Spider-Man No Way Home in the rear view, all eyes are on the upcoming Spider-Man 4.
It took me a long time to learn to get through that darkness.
And since it's all up in the air right now, I have a hot take for you. What if Tom Holland didn't need the MCU? Okay, let me explain. You see, when Holland was first introduced to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, he was quite firmly attached to the hero of the franchise, Tony Stark. Iron Man was the one who gave Spidey his high-tech suit, and in Spider-Man Homecoming, he played the role of mentor figure to Pete. Even after Tony's demise in Avengers Endgame, Spider-Man Far From Home saw Parker dealing with his grief over Tony's death and coming to terms with the fact that he's Tony's legacy.
Everywhere I go, I see his face. I just really miss him.
But Spider-Man No Way Home took his arc in a completely different direction. Tom Holland had the pleasure of encountering his fellow movie Spider-Men, while also having to face their villains. Now, the thing that differentiated Tom from Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man is that the latter two had never been part of anything bigger than themselves. Tom was a freaking Avenger, yo! And he had a billionaire benefactor giving him all the latest gadgets. As No Way Home unfolded though, Tom realized that in order to set things right, he'd have to sacrifice those things. With the world forgetting Peter Parker, he no longer has access to the tech. He has basically become the same thing as Tobey and Andrew were. This movie was a massive success. You don't need me to tell you that.
Honestly, the highlight of my career.
Me and Tobey arrived and all of their arms were just open.
So what do I think this means for Tom's Spider-Man? I think it's time to disengage Tom Holland from the larger MCU.
Hello, Peter.
It's a bold suggestion, so I need to make things clear. I am not by any means suggesting handing Tom Holland to Sony or anything. Not entirely. But as y'all know, the roller coaster of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is barreling into a massive multiversal conflict centered on Kang the Conqueror. What I'm suggesting is that Spider-Man doesn't need to be part of that storyline. In fact, I'd go so far to say that Tom shouldn't even interact with fellow street-level heroes like Daredevil. He should stand totally apart from the rest of the franchise and its characters. And you know what? Spider-Man is a fun series, so you could throw in some cheeky jokes about how Spidey isn't bothered in the least that the whole universes are colliding.
I know you know what I'm talking about.
If anything, the blurring of the lines between universes can explain why Spidey is so uninvolved with the larger affairs of the MCU. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why on earth would Marvel Studios do this? I'm not blaming you for feeling like I've suggested something outrageous or even sacrilegious. Marvel Studios has fought long and hard with Sony Pictures to get the rights to bring Spider-Man into the MCU. The fight hasn't even stopped yet. I'm sure you remember the time when Disney pushed too hard and Sony pulled the plug on the deal. Having Spider-Man in the MCU though doesn't necessarily mean that Spider-Man has to constantly be interacting with characters outside of his neighborhood, so to speak. I'd argue that it's kinda weird that Peter Parker, the high schooler from Queens, has been on a space adventure to fight a purple nutsack-chinned alien.
Speaking of loyalty,
What the
I know what you're gonna say.
You should not be here.
I was gonna go home,
I don't want to
but
hear
it was such a long way down, and I just thought.
That only worked because of his association with Iron Man. There are a couple reasons why I think Marvel should distance Spider-Man from the rest of the MCU. I'll start with the fact that the MCU characters are distracting from Spider-Man's own cast. For many characters, that wouldn't be a problem. Iron Man himself doesn't have a very vibrant social circle to himself. We got Pepper and we sort of got Jarvis, and that was good enough. But Spider-Man has a lot of characters that we haven't gotten to meet yet. Michelle Jones and Ned Leeds are great as the Spider Trio, and there was also Aunt May, but even they haven't gotten much development. And we're still missing the loads of classic characters like Gwen Stacy, Norman and Harry Osborn, and Felicia Hardy. They say that these characters will show up eventually, but it's kinda weird that Spider-Man's own characters have taken second priority.
A couple of magic words myself, starting with the word please.
Please, Scooby-Doo this crap.
The time we could have given to these characters was taken up by Iron Man in Homecoming, Nick Fury and Maria Hill in Far From Home, and Doctor Strange in No Way Home. If we de-emphasize the role of these outsiders in future Spider-Man movies, we can make room for these characters to show up. We may have lost the Osborns to the MCU multiverse plot, but it can stop there.
I'm gonna need the suit back.
But I'm nothing without this suit.
If you're nothing without this suit, then you shouldn't have it.
Indeed, if Spider-Man 4 is going to be about Peter finding his way back to MJ and Ned, I'd like that to be a personal story for him, without the involvement of, I don't know, Adam Warlock or whoever. Do you think I've lost my marbles yet? You ain't seen nothing. What about the Sony universe? Look, the Sony movies, which were set in Sony's Spider-Man universe according to their last name change, weren't very good. The Venom movies were fun, but in a very unintentional way. And Morbius? I think that movie is worth a more $1 billion, but most people disagree.
I mean, what's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine.
And looking at the future slate of the SSU, we have a Venom sequel, Kraven the Hunter's solo movie, El Muerto the movie for some reason, and of course Madame Web. I'd say the early prognosis on these movies is pretty bleak. So how about instead of letting Sony continue to morb all over these characters and movies, let someone who actually cares make them? After all, Sony was already building up to a confrontation between their villain protagonists and Spider-Man, with Vulture and Morbius forming the foundation of a Sinister Six. We can assume that Venom, Kraven, and El Muerto will fill out that lineup. A sixth villain has yet to be introduced, of course, but I'm sure the Paste Pot Pete movie will be announced shortly. But I do still want to keep Spider-Man in the MCU. How will that work? Well, if Spider-Man doesn't interact with anyone in the MCU, is he really in the MCU?
Yeah, I miss him too.
What I'm picturing is sort of a cinematic universe limbo where Spider-Man isn't really in the MCU, but he isn't in the SSU either.
Nick Fury's calling you.
I don't really want to talk to Nick Fury. Why?
This way, Marvel Studios can use the villains that Sony introduced, and may continue to introduce in their movies. At the same time, they won't have to deal with the abysmal writing level at Sony Pictures and will be able to actually do justice to the characters.
We have a job to do, and you're coming with us.
And when Marvel feels like it, they can be the ones to develop a character from the ground up in the Spider-Man movies. Does that mean MJ and Ned will be in the SSU? Sort of.
I get more compliments on the lip sync battle than I do for any of my actual work. Ever.
I mean,
To the point where, like, now I'm like,
Does that mean it'll be Morbin time in the MCU? Again, sort of. Will any of that matter? No, and that's the point. I think that this is the compromise that'll best suit the suits involved, while also leaving the creative doors wide open for Spider-Man as a character. It might mean that Spider-Man will never get to face Kang or any of the other big bads of the MCU, but I think that's a small enough price to pay. Those are all Avengers level threats, and remember, Spidey isn't an Avenger anymore.
oh, don't do that. Stop it.
So this is my crazy idea for the future of Spider-Man. What do you guys think? Please don't unsubscribe, but feel free to vent your indignation in the comments.